All right, welcome back, folks. Congratulations, you chose to click on the second video. I'm impressed and glad to see that you're here. I thought it would be valuable for me to kind of go through the different parts of this project to hopefully give you a good, strong start to it and to allow you to begin to brainstorm. So hopefully that will be the case with this video. If I'm going too slow, feel free to double or triple the speed and get through that video a little bit faster. And you can even slow it down if you would like me to go slower. So let's talk about this Endpoints project. Way back in early October, I mentioned that you were going to become the Rock Whisperer. Remember, our essential question is asking, what stories do rocks tell? And so now it's time for you to tell me what these stories are and how you see this connecting to maybe something a little more profound, a little more deep, and maybe something personal to your life. Because what's the point of learning anything in school if you can't relate it to something personal about yourself? It's important to connect things to who you are and to make meaning out of it. So, as you think about this project, I want you to think about several key important pieces. You're going to tell the story, the life story of a rock. Now, if you remember from the rock cycle chart that we had earlier, there is no single linear straight path here. So you don't have to start with an igneous rock. You don't have to start with the sedimentary. You don't have to start with the metamorphic. You get to choose which rock to start with. And they can go in any direction, right? So you could choose to start with sedimentary and it could become metamorphic if you want, or it could become igneous, or you could start with a totally different rock type. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Another important thing to keep in mind is that you need an answer from the essential question to kind of be like the anchor to the story. That's why it says this right here, choose the big idea. To me, the big idea is the answer or one of the answers to the essential question. And so, what is it that rocks are telling us? What are they saying about themselves and about us? So, once you've found an idea to anchor into, then I think your story becomes very easy to tell because that's what you're telling us about is this cool big idea. Now, you also need to choose the details. As you're talking about like an igneous rock, you should be bringing in all of the things that we've been learning about igneous rocks. So remember the 5 rules or 5 laws of igneous rocks. This is where your notes are going to become really invaluable because I suspect most of us don't remember all of those details just in your brain, in your short-term memory. It's short-term for a reason. So go back to your notes, look through them. Hopefully you've taken good, thorough notes, and so when you start reading them, it should come back to you in that detail. But for example, igneous rocks, you would want to talk about coarse-grained or fine-grained. You'd want to talk about intrusive or extrusive. You'd want to include the rules for how igneous rocks work. How their crystal size tells us about their cooling rate and their location. So all of those really good, juicy details end up here. And of course, the more details you put into your story, the stronger your story is, and the more likely you are to get the kind of grade that you're hoping for. Then, of course, the last part on here is choosing the format. So I posed this to you as a cartoon story, which I think is a really good way to approach it. However, I want to stay flexible to your needs. So that's why it says choose the format. So there could be ways that you could customize your project. You could make it an illustrated diary, for example. That's different than a cartoon strip and maybe fits more with how you're envisioning it. Or maybe you do an illustrated script. So you do it more like a movie script or a play script, but then you illustrate like what's happening in each of these scenes. So think about those kind of formats. If you really don't have a strong opinion, I highly recommend the cartoon strip version. It's really ideal for this, and I don't think it would steer you wrong. But as I said, if you have strong opinions and you want to customize it, just talk to me about it so that so that we make sure that it's going to satisfy what you want and also the things that I'm looking for to be able to give you a grade. 99% of the time, I'll give you the green light without any sort of like roadblocks or speed bumps. But I would feel bad if you spent a bunch of time on a project idea that ultimately the format didn't work for me. So I just want to make sure that you don't waste your time doing something that wouldn't work for both of us. All right. So let's get to the big idea. Once I mentioned that, you might have freaked out a little bit on the inside saying, I don't know what the big idea is, Mr. Rogers. I don't know the answer to the essential question. And to me, I think there are lots of possibilities here. You know, if rocks can talk, what are they saying about our planet and about us and how we relate to it? So I've got at least 5 ideas that I think would have some merit. If any of these five connect with you, feel free to steal these ideas. After all, you connect with it because the idea is in your head too. So it's not really stealing. It's just you kind of noticing it because I pointed it out to help you out with it. So the first big idea could be that rocks are kind of like books. In other words, rocks can tell us a lot about our past. Think back to the deep time calendar, all of those crazy things that have happened to the earth, all of that change. It all comes about because rocks have told us about these things. So that might be the cool answer to the essential question. It could be your big idea, and that could be then therefore be the center of this story. Or if you remember, one of the early ideas that we kicked around is how old is old? And I think we all walked away with that deep time calendar with the idea that holy cow, the Earth is unimaginably old. Like even in a calendar format, it's a bit much for your brain to kind of wrap around. Dinosaurs died December 25th. They're young. We're even younger, which actually leads to the third possible big idea. I think something that maybe rocks are talking to us about is how tiny we humans are. We're just a little speck in an immense ocean of time. In 4.5 billion years, in one calendar year, if you think about it as our deep time calendar, we occupy the last day of that calendar. We're one of the youngest things on this planet. We're just babies. And so perhaps that is what the rocks are telling us. Or maybe it's this fourth one here, that the earth spares no one. If you think back to all of this, the things that we've been learning about with the rock cycle, with the different rock types, the deep time calendar, all of the work we've done with how the hydrosphere is so brutal and changes the geosphere constantly. Well, here we go then. Number 4, the earth spares no one. Every sphere has undergone enormous changes. The atmosphere has. It's never been exactly like it is right now. The geosphere has changed. The biosphere has changed. The hydrosphere has changed. So there's just so much change going on. And so perhaps that's the answer. Maybe that's what rocks are telling us, is that the only constant in this whole universe is that there's always change. Or perhaps there's this fifth possibility: adapt or go extinct. And to me, this really comes about because of the deep time calendar, as well as the stuff we've learned about rocks. If we don't learn how to embrace change, we're going to get crushed by it because there's nothing but change on this planet. And so we need to be flexible, I think, and we need to be adaptable. One of the Portrait of a Graduate skills that they mention is flexibility and our ability to adapt to new situations. You can see it in the deep time calendar. There are all these mass extinctions where species were not able to adapt to change. And we need to be able to adapt if we want to survive. And it's true of our whole species, and maybe it's true about each of us as individuals. If you are not flexible, if you cannot learn how to embrace change, then you might get crushed by it, just like I might if I can't embrace it and accept it and find a way to turn it to my advantage. So, as you can see, lots of possibilities. I think rocks are saying a lot of things. And perhaps there's a sixth option that you're thinking about that I haven't even mentioned on here. So feel free to use one of these five if it really connects, but also know that you could go off on a totally different tangent on something else that you feel like rocks are saying. So, yeah, I think all of these relate to the planet, they relate to our species, but I think ultimately they all relate to us as individuals too. All right, now this slide is just to remind you that you've had a lot of learning experiences. You may feel like you are underprepared for this, but I don't believe you are. I think you have a lot of great experiences. Remember the Deep Time Calendar challenge that we did? We've done igneous rock labs. You've figured out the 5 rules. These are college level rules, so you have a great deal of detail about igneous rocks, about sedimentary rocks, about metamorphic rocks. You've practiced the vocab with them. We've looked at Minnesota fossils, so you can see exactly what Minnesota was like 450 million years ago. We've talked about rock dating and cross-cutting relationships, the law of superposition. All of these things, I think, have helped to inform you on the answer to the essential question. And so these can all become parts of your story as well. Even that rock cycle, the very last thing that we just talked about earlier today. All right, so project requirements. Here are things that need to happen in your project. Across deep time, your rock will change into all three rock types. So in your project, you need to involve deep time. This is going to be something that takes millions of years, this story, and it needs to involve all three rock types. If you skip any of those parts, your project is not going to be up to the standards that I'm looking for. You'll still get a grade for it. You may be happy with the grade, I'm not sure, but it won't be an A if you miss this part. Each page or cartoon cell, if you think about it that way, has one picture and one or two sentences. That's how cartoons work. They're very visual with just a little bit of writing to kind of back things up. You must use original, colorful artwork. So this is your artwork. You're not graded on how artistic you are or what your art skills are like. I'm just looking for you to give it your best effort, your best attempt. And so don't just slap something together, but make it look as good as you possibly can. And make sure that it's your work rather than someone else's or AI or that type of thing. Make sure that you're following the rock rules that we've uncovered. If you have an igneous rock and it has little crystals, then it should have and better have formed up on the surface really fast, which force the crystals to grow small. If you break those rules, then what that is really saying is to me is that you don't understand the rules yet. And so therefore I couldn't give you like a full score that you might be looking for. Effectively use the professional language. So in other words, use the vocab. Don't talk to me about big crystals. Talk to me about coarse-grained crystals. Don't talk to me about metamorphic rocks that don't have layers. Tell me about non-foliated metamorphic rocks. Okay? And then, of course, include your big idea. Include the answer that you think you have to the essential question. Make that the heart of the story. So if you want to talk about how we need to be adaptable and change with the changes that come our way, then your rock story would be perfect for that. You could talk about how this rock is changing throughout deep time and how important it is for the rock and for us to be flexible. That's just one example. Whatever you lock into for your big idea, it just needs to be part of the story. All right, when is this going to be due? You're going to have a little over a week to work on this. And that would include then, or that would be the due date here of Monday, November 11th. Remember, you're going to get a work day on Tuesday, but there's no reason why you couldn't start it on the weekend. If you have time and you have the inclination and you want to get out ahead of this thing, feel free. But that's when the due date will be. All right. Now, I always like to do this as well. Whenever there's a big project, I like to break things into smaller steps to help people kind of navigate through it. Because sometimes you can get paralyzed by the size of a project. So here is a checklist that I think you should follow if you're looking for my advice. If you don't need my advice, you tackle the project the way you want to. But if you want this support, feel free to use it. I think you should start with deciding on your format first. Like what kind of project are you going to create? You going with a cartoon strip idea, or do you want to customize it into something different, like an illustrated diary, script, etc.? Once you've chosen the format, then choose your big idea. What EQ answer do you think tells the story that rocks are trying to tell us? Then plan out the basic steps of your story. Take a piece of paper, maybe put like six grid, put lines on it to make 6 panels, and then just kind of rough out a sketch of how you think the story is going to play out. Maybe do multiple pages. I suspect it might take more than just 6 cells to tell the entire story here of a rock changing into all these different things. When the basics seem set, then expand on each part of your story and put in more details. I would, as always, encourage you to start with pencil and then move to color as you lock in your choices. Don't jump immediately to permanent ink because if you're anything like me, I change my mind constantly as I'm creatively producing things. So give yourself that flexibility. Don't box yourself in. Keep checking the quality of your work using our grading criteria. I'm not going to go into it here in the presentation. It is linked in this slideshow. So feel free to click on it in advance. Otherwise, we'll talk about it a bit more on Monday just to make sure that you're all feeling familiar with how I'm going to grade it. And then remember, your art does not need to be perfect in order to be awesome. Quite the opposite, in fact. You can tell an amazing story with very limited artwork. The most important part is not the artwork, it's the story that you're telling. So just keep that in mind. Don't let the art part of this throw you off your game. And then that's basically it. I'm really excited to see what you guys produce and what you create. I think it's going to be really neat. I hope that it allows you to be creative, maybe have a little bit of fun with it, and produce something that you can feel proud of. And remember, since this is endpoints, obviously you want to get it right the first time, but if you miss the mark a little bit, I'll give you feedback. And then if you wanted to go back and change it and improve on it to make it a better grade, you obviously have that option. So you have complete control of this. And so keep that in mind as you get nervous. Just keep telling yourself, hey, I got this. I'm in control. Even if it doesn't work out exactly the way I want the first time, I can fix it and I can get it to where I do want it. So that's basically it. I'm going to wish you guys all the best luck on this. If you have some spare time today in class, fantastic. Why don't you go ahead and work on that? Otherwise, good luck to you. We'll have work time on Tuesday, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week. All right, folks, we'll see you then.